Well, the company that was the biggest, the first quadrilla, the one that was all for fracking, has actually said fracking doesn't work in the UK. The geology is too fractured, and it doesn't work. And that should have always been visible. In North America, there were vast, prairies and all sorts of things. But here, it's an urban country, largely. And you can move almost nothing on scale without causing small earthquakes. So he's on a good one there. But but the other thing, The Guardian have run a series recently on the hidden hand of the monarchy in relation to acts of parliament. It's never been declared properly where the Crown says we have an interest. It hasn't been publicly disclosed, and that
this
needs
is
to change.
Rob Evans, I think, isn't it?
That's right, and that needs to change. And again, I feel that from what we've heard, that Charles A will up his green agenda, and B would have no trouble saying fine. If we make an intervention, it shall be public.
Well, this is the extraordinary thing, isn't it? That the Crown has got the right to actually call in a law if it affects the monarchy and alter it before it passes it into law.
Well, where it becomes really sensitive and tricky is when the ownership is uncertain. If a law affects the Crown estate, who does it affect? The manager, which is the government, or the owner, which is the king? There's all this confusion, and the purpose of the confusion in the end is to make sure the ordinary public know nothing and understand nothing.
What do you think? What do you think's the future for the Crown estate? And it is massive, isn't it? Do you know how many acres it is altogether?
God, yeah, 145. No, that's the Duchy of Cornwall. The Crown estate is about 400,000 acres, but again, the measurement of the acres is very imprecise. The Crown estate owns some of the foreshore, but it's not listed which bits. It's leased off bits to ports, and it's leased off bits to farmers and fishermen and all sorts of things.
Well, it's also the bed of the North Sea and the seabed. It's starting to lease off now for these wind farms, the tidal up in the north of Scotland, the tidal power system, and of course things like North Sea oil.
Yeah, the way leads, as they call them, that is the rent you pay if you run a cable out to a thing at sea, a wind generator. That goes to the Crown estate, and the Crown estate is now making extremely serious money out of the way leaves. Again, all this needs to be part of the public discussion.
Well, it is interesting because Charles has been pushing this whole idea of wind farms at sea for a long time, which he stands to personally benefit from.
That is it. Who's benefiting? And in a certain kind of crisis, the government could abandon its management of the Crown estate and give it back to King Charles. Then he would get it all, tax-free. There's something else that's as essential as land, and that's water. We get water. Our water bills down here in the southwest are some of the highest in the world, and we got the worst pollution of our rivers. It's done by these people, and they charge us money for it. There's a basic kind of disconnect. We pay for people for one of the most vital things in life, water, and they turn around and dump sewage in rivers and on the beaches.
Well, I mean, up until the end of the Second World War, there were still tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that got their water from a well cabin for free.
Yep. I lived in the village where we did. We had a pump, and you went up to the pump in the morning and you filled your bucket or your kettle. Yes, I remember that personally. But
But
one of the
now,
great
the situation now, sorry to interrupt you, but the
no,
situation now is if you've got enough money, you can buy shares in your local water company and the dividends will pay the bill, so you never actually pay a bill.
Yep, and the dividends are enormous and the salaries are obscene. If the people did their job, you might be able to justify it, but they don't. There were 300,000, more than 300,000 sewage pollution incidents last year. And the government's busy beating up poor people and hammering them, and it's not hammering these people.
I think the amazing thing about the legacy of privatisation, Thatcher and all that, was not only incidents like the Camelford water disaster, where like the first week that the privatisation people took over, they poisoned and to death many people in this village in Cornwall. I think it's in Cornwall. Is the fact that if you're poor, you're basically paying for the rich's water.
Yep. Firstly, you're also paying for unsafe water. The end of all this billions paid to shareholders isn't safe water. It's contaminated water. You followed the Hillsborough disaster, didn't you? It took 25 years for the truth to come out, and the government rigidly blocked every attempt by anybody to have the people responsible and to stop blaming the fans. Our government has a completely mistaken notion of what its job is. And, for instance, it's too close to the Crown Estate. It's got too big an interest in it to actually straighten out the Crown Estate and put it in the land registry, show all the bits of it so that people can see what land is around. There's an artificial market in houses in Britain, and that's at the bottom of it. It's not a lack of land as such, but it would help if we knew where the land was and who owned it, but we don't.
Can you just run us through the books that you've done on, particularly on the land ownership in Ireland and England and elsewhere? Most
of them are now on Amazon. The one that's in print and currently selling is Who Owns Ireland, and that's available Amazon.uk and other good booksellers. And but Who Owns the World and Who Owns Britain and Ireland are out of print, but you can get them, and the prices are quite reasonable.
So
even I can afford to buy the odd one.
Okay. All right, Kevin Cahill, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Tony. Great.